Well, what a joyous day to gather on this day, a joyous day as we celebrate, first off, the mothers. We all come from mothers, so we all celebrate them today, both those living and deceased. So we celebrate our mothers today, but we also celebrate in the life of the church today this great solemnity of the Ascension, our feast day here at this parish. And it's a joyous day for us as our parish, as we saw in the video, as a parish family, because we now get to celebrate 25 years. I was in second grade when this parish started, so a small little guy back then. So we have so much to be joyous for and so much to be thankful for on this Sunday. And we, in a unique way, are a very unique parish. So firstly, we just happen to be the best parish in the Archdiocese, if I might say so myself, with the three best priests in the Archdiocese, if I might say so myself, with, of course, the best parishioners. We wouldn't be a parish without the parishioners. So of course, we're unique in that way, but we're also unique because of our name. So most parishes are named after a saint or after some title of our Lord or our Blessed Mother, but we are named after an event, a mystery in the life of our faith. And it's the very last event, the very last time we get to see our Lord, the very last event of his public ministry. And thankfully, we have this beautiful stained glass window here in our sanctuary, which helps us to keep this event always in our minds, this last event, this last time that we get to see our Lord. But just take yourself back to that day that it actually happened 2,000 years ago, and imagine what it must have been like that day as one of those disciples. And as a disciple, you would have seen so much already, a lot of events that you were just trying to understand. First off, you've seen Jesus in those 3 years of his public ministry doing some of the most remarkable things you'd ever seen in your life, curing the sick, raising the dead, walking on water, calming storms, all of those great miracles of our Lord. And then, of course, you would have seen our Lord suffer that very horrible death, and you would have seen that tomb empty, wondering where he must have gone. And then now you spent 40 days with Jesus resurrected, proving to you very certainly that he is alive, he is well, and he is with us. And so then you get to this day, and on top of all of those amazing things you finally see this: Jesus lifted up into the heavens in your very own eyes. Just imagine what those disciples must have thought that day. The only comparison that we have throughout the scriptures to this event would be Elijah, the great Elijah in the Old Testament, who was taken straight up into heaven in a fiery chariot. That's as close as we get to this event today. But I think our beautiful window here really captures what it must have been like that day. Most of the disciples here in our window, they're just watching in awe of what's happening as it unfolds before them. You got Mary there dressed in blue, pondering this event, praying, reflecting on it in her motherly heart. And there's the guy in the green, right, who's just praying, wondering, why are you leaving, Jesus? Why are you leaving us? Leaving us a second time. And so the readings of the church, that the church gives us today, I think, are really pretty neat once you start recognizing it. Because with our gospel today, we got to hear the very end of Luke's gospel. And then our very first reading was the book of Acts, which is the other book that Luke wrote. So we hear the ending of one of his books and the very beginning of the next one, which I think is important for us today to really understand this great mystery of the Ascension. Because it's with this event, the Ascension, that the disciples really enter into a brand new chapter of their lives, a new book of their lives. They spent all these years now with Jesus, but now he was ascending into heaven. Something new was going to happen. They had a new mission now. So it was now not their turn to learn from Jesus. Now they had to go out. They had to go out and preach the gospel to the entire world, Jesus said. And so I think they were really left with three options that day, all of those disciples. They could have just stood there staring at the clouds. That would have just been weird, though, seeing those disciples just staring at the clouds, wondering when Jesus would return. They could have just stayed there, not sharing their faith with others, like a good piece of cake that you don't want to share with others. You just want to keep it to yourself. Or maybe that's just me, I guess. But the disciples could have kept this good news and not gone and shared it with the rest of the world. That was their first option. Secondly, they could have gone back to their regular daily lives that they had left behind 3 years before, gone back to what they knew, what was familiar to them. But they knew that their lives were changed by all these events, and so that was not an option for them. They couldn't go back seeing all those things that they had seen, go back to what they knew before. And so they had this third option, which was the most scary of all of the options. They could actually go, as Jesus said, go out and share this good news with the entire world without fear. And thankfully they would, or else none of us would be here today. If they would have just kept that faith to their hearts and to their own, none of us would be here today. And so I think on this Ascension Sunday, we are left with those same three options of what we can do with our faith. Firstly, we too could just sit and wait for Jesus to return, not sharing that gospel with anybody else. The second option is we could just go on with our lives unaffected by all of these events that have happened in these past few months that we've celebrated. We could just go back to our daily lives as if these are nothing, just stories that we've heard. Or we could do the third option, the option that the disciples chose, which is going out and sharing the gospel. And if we don't share that gospel, who will share it? If these events mean anything to us, these events we've celebrated for the past few months, how can we not go out and share it? If our Lord's ascension means anything to us, how can we not share that good news, that joy with others and invite others? So maybe a good examination for us today is just to really ask ourselves, when was the last time I shared my faith with anybody? When was the last time maybe I invited somebody to go to Mass with me? When was the last time I actually prayed with somebody or prayed for somebody? Sometimes at the end of Mass, I see people so eager to share the gospel that they can't wait for the final prayer. They're just ready to leave Mass after they receive the Eucharist. That's almost the eagerness that we want, the eagerness to go and to share the gospel after we've received the final blessing, of course. But at the end of Mass, I'll say once again, as we always say, go and announce the gospel of the Lord. This really is our mission as Christians. This is our identity as Christians. This is what our ascended Lord asks all of us to do today.